Boker Tov and good morning. I'm Rabbi Steve Moskowitz of Congregation Lador Vador on Long Island, and this is Monday Musings, a 15 to 20 minute spiritual kickstart to the week. I am joined this morning by Rob Kammerer, a founding board member of the Interfaith Nutrition Network, that was founded in 1983. The Inn serves the homeless, the hungry, and the impoverished here on Long Island. And Rob also on the side is a physics professor. So I've asked Rob to be on the show to tell us a little bit about the work of the Inn and also to tell us how he got involved in this work. So first, Rob, welcome, and tell us what the Inn does.
Well, good morning to you, and thank you for having me. The Interfaith Nutrition Network, has a tagline of serving hungry and homeless Long Islanders. And I'll answer that question. I'll try my best to be brief with a little history. The Inn was founded in 1983. Basically, at Hofstra University, there were a group of students who wanted to help out, and they were going into the city to volunteer at a soup kitchen. And one day they're coming back and they see somebody in Hempstead eating out of a garbage can. And I guess the light bulb went off and they all said, well, what are we driving into Brooklyn for? And that was the seed that started the Inn. So the Inn began as a single soup kitchen in Hempstead in May of 1983. From the very beginning, the Inn had two policies that I think are landmark policies for the Inn that continue to this day. One is there's no questions asked at the soup kitchen. Anybody can come to the soup kitchen and come in and eat. Nobody says, well, you have to prove that you didn't eat breakfast today. Nobody says, well, I need to see a tax return from last year. All you have to do is come to the door. That's it. And the other landmark policy is there's never any media allowed in the soup kitchen. Especially this time of the year as we move towards Thanksgiving, there are a number of television stations that basically say, can we come into the soup kitchen on Thanksgiving and show the poor people eating? And it's like, what? Our policy? No way. This is not the proudest moment in their life. They don't want to be on broadcast TV when they're eating in the soup kitchen. You can talk to volunteers and show volunteers, but the people who come to the Inn to eat are referred to as guests. The guests you don't show. Now, those two policies of no questions asked and privacy continue to this day. Other communities on Long Island, like the Inn's model, and the Inn expanded to over 20 soup kitchens at one time. The Inn also, even though we don't ask questions, we try and be really good listeners. And we found out that many of the soup kitchen guests did not have a place to stay. So the Inn opened up its first emergency shelter in 1986. And the Inn at one time had 8 emergency shelters. The Inn also, as an outgrowth of the emergency shelters, started a program for long-term housing. And the emergency shelters would be a case where a family would come in and they share a room in a big house with other families, and they might be there for 3 weeks or 3 months or more. The long-term housing would be a family would basically receive a house. I mean, that's not their own house. It might be a 2-family house. They'd receive an apartment in a 2-family house, and they could stay there a year, 2 years, 3 years. They would pay rent, but what they could afford, if they could only afford $200 a month, they'd pay $200 a month. And the model for that program is help the family become independent. So we'd help them along the way, and maybe after a year, they could move out and afford the going rate for apartments. And we'd say, congratulations, you're now independent. Please move on, and a new family would move in.
Rob, can I ask, you also have a food pantry too, right? That's people.
Yes. And the Inn at the soup kitchen, the Inn does have a food pantry, correct.
And also you can get, if I remember, there's also, like, if you need clothes or other sorts of things, you have.
Yes. The inn has, we give it a name. We call it the clothing boutique. So people who donate clothing, we set it up in a little store, and it looks very nice. It looks like a regular retail outlet. The guests can come in and shop for clothing. Everything is free.
Yeah, you one time told me, and this made a deep impression on me, that that people often need, to take a shower, and that bars of soap are something that's very, very needed.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I mean, shower, excuse me, showers are something that many of the guests don't have access to. And there's no place where they can get access to a shower. So again, being good listeners, as I mentioned earlier, we took, the Inn Soup Kitchen has 5 bathrooms, and 2 of the bathrooms have showers. So when the soup kitchen is open normally, and this COVID time it's not, but under normal times, on a daily basis, 50 or 60 people take a shower. And the toiletries, like people donate those little travel soaps and shampoos, they're a big help because the folks can take showers then.
Yeah, and this is not something you could do during with the current situation of COVID. You had told me that since its founding, the inn has served 15 million meals. Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah, yes, you did. I mean, that's an amazing number. It's one of those numbers where who would have thunk? But thanks to the staff and volunteers, that's possible.
And the inn does this it's almost entirely volunteer led and driven.
Yes, on a typical day, which is not now, but let's say pre-March, if you went to the inn's largest soup kitchen, there may be like 3 staff people and 30 volunteers. So it's definitely volunteer driven.
Right. And I want to make sure I remember this, because I think it's really impressive that an organization that started with this sort of light bulb, as you called it, it's also helped provide shelter and housing to 150,000 or 170,000 people, was it?
Yes, since the inn's founding, we provided shelter to 100, probably even more now, 170,000 families, and sometimes it's individuals. And I want to add that, one of the hallmarks of the inn is that it tries to be responsive to need. And in the history of the inn has had emergency shelters for people with AIDS. The inn has had emergency shelters for refugees from Central America. So we like to think we can kind of turn on a dime to provide help when it's needed.
And the annual budget is $6 million, and it's primarily given by donors and individuals.
Yes. The inn's annual budget is approximately $6 million, and the bulk of that, I would say over 90%, comes from regular folks, as Jane and John Doe. Some can afford. There's some people who once a month they send $1 in an envelope. There are other people who are very blessed in life and send a lot more, but it's those Jane and John Does that make the inn possible. And we're very proud of that. That's important to us, that the community supports what we do.
So let's go back a little bit, Rob, because how did you get involved in this? Did you grow up on Long Island?
Well, I'm very proud to say I was born in Brooklyn, so I always like to give a shout out to Brooklyn. But then,
my mom would appreciate that. But okay, so you're born in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, and when I was very young, my parents moved out to Long Island. So I grew up basically in West Hempstead.
Right nearby.
Yeah, right nearby.
And so, how did you get involved? I mean, I don't see the connection between physics and the work of the inn. So you're going to have to draw that line. You're going to have to draw that line for me.
Yeah. There's a big gap there. Well, I think I'm just one of those people who like technical stuff like math and physics. But then, I just gave a shout out to Brooklyn. I'm going to give a shout out to my parents also. I think anytime anybody says, "Oh, Rob, you're so wonderful doing what you do," I said, don't thank me. It's my parents. This is how my parents raised me. So that's how I was always altruistic. And that's because of my parents. So I was altruistic. But yeah, I was one of those people who would talk the talk, but never walk the walk. And one time, just by chance, I went to a conference I happened to be Catholic, but I went to a conference of where there was a bishop speaking. This was obviously back in the 1980s, and an archbishop from Detroit, whose name was Thomas Gumbleton, was speaking, and he was speaking about serving the community. And it's just being in the right place at the right time. That stuck in my mind. And then that was on a Saturday. The next Tuesday was at a meeting. You'll know my politics when you hear this. It was a nuclear freeze meeting on Long Island. And I was there at the meeting, and the person who was running the meeting said, "Oh, there's this soup kitchen opening up in Hempstead. If they're looking for volunteers, sign your name if you're interested." And just the combination of my parents and going to that talk on that Saturday.
What did the Archbishop say exactly? What was the inspiring piece?
I think it was basically about, if you're here on this earth not to serve yourself, you're here on this earth, I think, to serve others. And as I guess everybody listening right now knows, if you serve others, you really are serving yourself. That's the way it works. So
I'm not sure everyone knows that, Rob. I appreciate what you saying that, but I'm not sure that's obvious.
Yeah, well, it is obvious. And if I may, I'll just tell a quick anecdote about that one. I was at the soup kitchen once, and there was this woman who was in her mid 80s named Alba, and all the guests loved her. She was cheerful and happy, always hugging the guests. And one day I said to her, "Alba, this is so great. All the guests, love you. You mean so much to them." And she says, "That's not really the case. They do so much for me. They do more for me than I do for them." And that's the way I think people are wired. When you give, when you are of service freely and lovingly, I hate to put it this way, but the rewards you receive are immense every second. It's a great place to be in life. And I think the Archbishop spoke along those lines about the idea of selflessness, but it really hit a spot for me, because I think prior to that, and my friends always teased me about this, I would kind of say, "Well, we got to help out doing this. We got to do that. We should do this." And I never did. I said it, but I never did anything. And just the combination of him speaking and me being at that meeting, I put my name on that sheet of paper, and obviously it's changed my life in immense ways.
Right.
Good ways.
Yes, and you've been involved ever since.
Yes, I've been involved since 1983. I have a lot of staying power there. And I have to mention this, that I said, volunteering changed my life in a very big way, because that's how I met my wife. My wife, Jean, I met her. We were both volunteers at the very beginning.
Well, so that's a wonderful, wonderful, addition to your volunteer service, right?
Oh gosh, yes, I would say the major part.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that story. It's always nice as a member of the clergy to hear that a possible sermon or a possible idea that you put out there from the pulpit could have such a profound impact.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I don't know if you want me to make an association here, but this is something very specific to the Jewish faith. I've spoken in a number of temples to the young people, like the third graders, the second graders, etc. And oftentimes I ask them the question, how did you learn about charity? I think your term is tzedakah. Mm-hmm. So I asked the little kids, how did you learn about tzedakah? And most of them say things like, "Well, when I was a little kid, I was in the city and my mommy gave the man on the street $1. And I've heard that countless times. And I'm going to say this to your fellow clergy. The parents don't know that. I wish the parents were in this room to hear that. And I'm sure, little kids, there's so much that the clergy does to help little kids. that you don't know about. I mean, I happen to hear it because I asked that question, but it's really important that you know you do incredibly great things that you probably don't even know about. But I happen to know about some of it. So,
Yeah, but I think part of what you're saying as well, and this goes back to the influence of your parents, is that a, a child seeing their parent doing something is the greatest teaching that
oh,
they can offer, and that goes beyond the archbishop's words or the rabbi's words that are said from the pulpit. You know, the modeling and the example is the greatest teaching that anyone can offer, most especially parents. And you're modeling as well. I want to make sure we touch on this, Rob, because our time is somewhat limited.
okay.
How, I understand some of the limitations that COVID has placed on the inn. I assume you can't have obviously large meals, so people have to come and get a meal in person, right, one by
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So the inn model used to be like a college cafeteria, a big room with lots of seats. People, the guests would come in, they get a tray, they'd have a full meal, like meat, potatoes, vegetables, dessert. And we'd be serving, you know, the numbers vary, but let's say earlier this year, the numbers might average 300, 350 meals a day. That stopped in the middle of March. That dining room could not be open. It's still not open. So we switched over to a to-go window. They don't drive up in their cars, obviously, but they walk up to a window and they get a nice bag lunch. It might be rice with chicken, a sandwich, juice, a piece of fruit, a snack. Um, Now we're serving an average of 1,000 meals a day. So
1,000 meals.
it's basically tripled since pre-pandemic.
And this is a direct result of the poverty and the issues of COVID and the pandemic.
Exactly. And, you know, people losing jobs. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, so there's triple the need.
tripled the need. And then the volunteers and mainly the staff have done an incredible job because,
And does that go to housing and homelessness as well, or more? Is it? Are you seeing it more in terms of the food? I mean, I'm not trying to be specific, but
well,
I'm just
no,
curious.
well, the increased need with food, the inn has been blessed to keep up with it. With housing, I'm sure the need for, well, I know they're not doing evictions now, but when they start allowing evictions, it's going to be a huge demand for housing. It's for the inn to say, well, we need more beds. That's hard because that means you have to get a whole new building. And I don't even want to think about that.
Right, right. So how can we? Let's make sure we touch on this, Rob, when to wrap up. How can
Yeah.
people help? What can people do?
Well, I think the simplest thing is they can go to the inn's website, which is www.the-inn.org. So again, it's www.the-inn.org. And there's a full list there, but quickly, people can make financial donations, obviously, whether it's $1 or $10 or whatever. The holiday season is coming, Thanksgiving, so food is always welcome, and people can make food donations via Amazon to the inn. I mentioned showers. If anybody's local, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who have like all these little soaps and shampoos in their drawer and they don't know what the heck to do with them. The inn can put them to good use. So anything that a normal person needs on a normal day, the inn needs. And if you would go to the inn's website, you'd find out how to make contact.
That's wonderful. I didn't know about the way to donate food through Amazon.
Oh, yeah. That was really helpful at the beginning because many people were not coming out. So Amazon, not to give them a plug, but they've been a blessing in this regard.
Oh, because that way I don't have to, in other words, I can just direct it to be delivered to the inn.
Correct. And I will mention something pertinent if you're local. The inn is having a curbside food drive on November 14th where people can just drive up in their car, put something on a table out on this sidewalk and drive away. They don't have to get out of the car. Everything's like at a distance.
Those are also enormously helpful suggestions. And people can also volunteer.
Oh, yes. People can also volunteer. And the main area of volunteering is at the soup kitchen. And with COVID, the number of volunteers is less because we have to keep spacing, but volunteer are what makes the in work. And again, on the website, folks can see the details about how to make contact about volunteering.
That's wonderful. Look, I want to thank you, Rob, again for joining me this morning and for teaching us about the inn and for modeling your devotion and bringing some measure of healing here to Long Island. I know there's a tremendous need, and I hope those who are watching can step up and help out as well. So thank you for your inspiring example, Rob. We appreciate you teaching us.
Thank you so very, very much. I wish everybody a good day now.
Thank you.